I'll give you the quick background of what we're doing here and like why we're doing it. So this is actually an extremely selfish pursuit. So like this isn't even a show. This is not like episodes or anything like that, although it will be episodic. This is purely me trying to reverse engineer and understand how people are making money with AI service businesses in particular. And then I think it'll be cool to understand how it's played into what you've built with KOL Sync. But I really want to dive deeply into the AI automation agency that you have started because you are one of the few people I know who's actually gone down this path and been aggressive with it and actually turned it into a sustainable business and then generated sub businesses out of it. So I think it would be really cool. Like the whole idea behind this is I really want to get into like the real of how you've been able to generate revenue with it, what the actual service itself looks like, how it differentiates between different clients that you work with, and how you've evolved it over time from like that very first customer and like what it looked like it was going to be then to what it has become now. So Kelano, if you want maybe to start with, would you be able to tell us just a little bit about what your AI automation agency is and how it operates today?
Yeah, for sure. So let me just maybe start with how I got into AI automations. I don't know if you can hear this. That's my cat. So this is live. I'm just going to open the door for my cat, which is going to take, my wife did it. She's the goat. So for those who don't know, I have had several agencies, mostly in the crypto space. And my agency before this current one was a reply guy agency. And I was a one-man army. I had some contractor reply guys. And then I hired Emilios. Shout out to him if you know him. And we ended up kind of like looking into how we could automate reports and all that stuff. And Emilios was actually initially the first one of us to try to automate things via ChatGPT and whatnot. And then I could feel this business was kind of dying down. So I was already thinking, I hate this business. I want to do something else. But until I found whatever is next, I'm just going to keep this one running because it pays the bills. Then I got into these automations for myself, effectively. So I let Emilios go because the revenue was going down. And so it was just me basically running the business. So I kind of had to figure out how to make my life easier. And so I could automate, building the reports for my clients, which was the very, very first thing. And I really fell into this rabbit hole of understanding how automations work. I discovered NA10 in 2024. If you heard about NA10, that was the golden age for people who are into e-com. That is the 2017 Facebook ads equivalent. If you're in DeFi, that is the ICO of 2018, the NFT run of 2021. So that was like the golden age of NA10. And I spent a few months learning that. I got into one of those guys on YouTube that has a school community, and I spent basically 3 to 6 months learning that stuff. And the thing I liked the most about doing this AI automation stuff was that it's hard metrics that I'm improving for a business, whereas my previous agency, the reply guy, it's all vanity metrics on Twitter, right? You increase impressions, it doesn't mean shit for your business. I hope we can swear here, by the way.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck.
Good. So, I was like, I can take this task that takes me 3 hours a week and I reduce it down to 2.5 hours, while the ROI for myself and for a potential client is very clear and easy to define. And I love that idea because my last 2 businesses were a little bit trickier to measure actual impact of the service for my clients. Whereas with this, I thought, it's very, very simple. If we save you 3 hours a week, it's measurable, quantifiable. If we improve your churn rate, if we improve your closing rate, all these things are highly measurable. And I thought, you know what, that is the kind of business I want to get into. So I'm going on for a long time here, and I promise you I will get somewhere. So I thought, I'm going to build some apps. I'm going to do something with automations, all right? And I ended up going down the automation route. I got my very first client through pure networking, someone I already knew, and I just messaged them when I was thinking about doing apps, and I was like, oh, guys, I could potentially do this. That could really help you. They are a KOL marketing agency. And I was like, guys, I can probably save you a couple of hours a week with this. They were interested. We hopped on a call, and that became my very first client. So there was no outbound, no reaching out. And, they took a chance on me. I told them, like, this is my new business. I've been doing this for myself for about 6 months, but I haven't done it for anyone else. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. I think, I'm going to deliver a crap ton of value. And I ended up signing them on a 5K retainer. So that was my very first client. And they're still my client actually to this day.
That's such a good story. One thing that I find really interesting is I actually almost have like a lot of experience with the automation that you created, because we're obviously a KOL agency. You were talking to me at the time you were building out a lot of your service and your platform about building things for the KOL agency that you worked with. What I find really interesting is, and like even when I was listening to your early story, I've built a ton of automations for myself. Us as a team, we've built a ton of automations for ourselves. But the idea of like taking that automation and almost like pitching it to another company, or seeing like an opportunity there and pitching it to another company, to me seems like a massive leap. Like it's almost like the golden child of any entrepreneur, podcaster, or whatever. That's what everyone is talking about at the moment. But the second you go to actually speak to a business owner, that's when it becomes real, because they actually have to pay for it, and you have to truly, like, they have to truly feel like you're going to save them money. So something I'm curious about is I got to see your journey of, you were doing this from the outside in, right? Like I was on the inside, this was my business. I was doing it inside out, but I was seeing you almost learn the business in real time. How long did it take you from when you first engaged that client to feel like you had like a really strong understanding of the problem? And then like, how long did it take you to come to some early solution that really started to help them? Or did you start with smaller automations and lower hanging fruit first? Like what did you initially work on with that first client?
That's actually a good question, because it's something I've been reflecting on a lot in the past 4 to 6 weeks. And I obviously had no idea how to run this business, right? So if I were to start the same business today, I would do quite a few things differently. But how I pitched these guys was basically, hey, I do automations. They are tech-savvy people, so they were aware of what automations were, which is the ideal client, right? It's someone who has a global awareness of what AI automations are, knows it's going to be useful for them, but doesn't have time to do it, right? And then you have the other type of client who has no idea about AI automations, and this is like a much harder sell. So I was very lucky that these guys were quite, friendly to onboarding someone to help them with automations. And I told them what I was doing. And because they already had this awareness of how they can improve their business, and they are very detail oriented, right? So that's also, to be honest, they were like the ideal first client I could have ever had, because they knew about our automations. They are very detailed focused people, very process driven people. So they already had ideas on things they wanted to automate, or things they wanted help with, to add some AI into the mix, right? So our first conversation, I told them what I did. They kind of had an idea of what they wanted to do. So after that, we kind of decided on 3 to 5 things that we were going to work on first. And that was one call. So it was I think it was one call, maybe it was 2 calls at best, but it was a very short process, like within a week from, let's hop on a call to let's get started. That was basically it. If I was
What was the first thing? What was the first thing that you did for them? Was it, because like I know now you've got like a full platform that automates a lot of the influencer marketing campaign work that goes into a campaign, but I remember early on when we were speaking, like I think you even did things like helping pay content creators. Like it's like that was like one small piece of a much bigger stack. Like
Yeah,
what were those early low hanging fruit automations that kind of like proved the value of what you were doing? Was
actually,
there
I
something
just
that
opened the
stuck out?
dashboard. I just opened the request dashboard. So I have a dashboard where they put request, where I add request. So the very first thing was, I don't want to give too many details, but I will go over it like as succinctly as I can. But they had a partner client, and every day they were the stuff they were doing for this partner client. They had to copy it from. They would record this campaign in their Notion, and every day they had to go and copy paste it in this client's Notion. And as they were kind of like really booming, it was taking them an hour and a half every single day. And there were obviously mistakes because you copy paste database rows, right? So the very first automation was to make an automation that every single day take any either new rows added to a database or updated rows within that same database and basically sends them to this other notion of the client's notion. And then it was actually quite complex because, first of all, it was multiple databases. You have to check updates if anything is deleted. There is nothing to actually tell you that a row has been deleted in Notion. So we had to track IDs and then see if the IDs were matching across both Notions. If one ID is missing in here, that means it's been deleted. So that is the very first automation that we created. And it sounds very simple, but it was actually not exactly simple. It took about 2 weeks to get it optimized.
Cool. So did you discover that issue through like, did you just get on a call, like those early calls and just say basically like, walk me through what's going on at the moment? Like walk me through your business, walk me through your biggest headaches. Like what was the discovery process like? Because I imagine, and we'll talk about, I want to get back to like how you had started again. And we'll talk about other clients as well. But with this first one, like how did you tease out the problems that kind of made you go, on like the impact to effort ratio, this is the one I really want to go for? Like, how did you do that discovery at the beginning?
Yeah, so the client already knew the first thing they wanted to work on, which was this specific issue. And that's what I said earlier. They were a really great first client because they already had so many ideas of things they wanted to work on. So I didn't come up with that. I mean, I asked them like, what are the things that are very repetitive, labor intensive that we can kind of help. And they were like, hey, this is the first thing we want to improve. It's taking, and it was the founder doing it as well. One of the founders, right? And they said it's taking easily an hour and a half every single day. There's always a mistake because you copy a row, you miss a row, etc. So that was the very, very first thing. And then we had like the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things I would say were major pieces of work. And then after that, we started to get smaller things like, hey, when we market invoice paid, we want this to happen, which is like a more smaller piece. But the first 5 automations or 5, I guess, requests they had were quite complex, which, to be honest, was a bit daunting because I was like, yeah, we can definitely do that. And I didn't know how I was going to do it, right? So there was a lot of kind of like R&D to do in the beginning because it was way more complex than the stuff I had done for myself.
Yeah. Has that R&D that you did in like those early pieces of automation, have they carried over to your other clients as well? Or is at least like the work you did informed how you do the work on your next one and it gets a bit easier as you go along? Or at this stage, are you still kind of in the zone of you're building something quite custom for every person that you work with?
So I guess two-part answer I would say on this. The R&D taught me a lot about NA10, which I was using for myself. And if you guys don't know, anyone watching, NA10 is a no-code AI automation platform. Very, very good if, especially before Claude, it was kind of the go-to platform to make any kind of automations. So that I learned a lot about how to think about automations in general, about solution, problem, and then figuring out, about problem, ideal solution, and figuring out what happens in the middle. I think that was a really big learning curve that I went through in the first 3 to 6 months. And then I look at the third, I don't want to call it automation because it's not just an automation, but the third thing we did for them was actually something very repeatable that I did for at least 4 or 5 other clients. So there were some things that were highly custom, some things were repeatable, templatable, and so not everything was exportable to other clients, but a lot of those things were mostly about how to think about a problem and a solution, which I think is the most important thing. And I would also say, I think I started this at the perfect time because now I don't do any automation myself. I'm doing all my automations through Claude these days. I haven't built an automation in NA10 since probably February or January. But the advantage is Claude was not very good yet at doing this, and the MCP, the API were not that great. So I actually learned how to do this by hand, like a good old boomer. And I think that serves me really well today because sometimes Claude is not perfect and I kind of need to go and troubleshoot, and I've used the platform so much that I have the ability and the knowledge to go and fix stuff, right? So, but now I also have a good enough knowledge of how this platform works that I can tell Claude what it needs to do. Let's not gender it, which I think is an advantage, right? Because if you just start by doing everything in Claude, you have no Scooby-Doo of how the platform works. And I think that's, a little bit of a competitive advantage, I would say, I have compared to someone starting this today.
Yeah, 100%. But it's funny how, like, as the platforms catch up, though, like Claude will probably make that component even easier and easier. But then again, you'll be on the front lines of figuring out how much further the automations can go. So, yeah, that background's going to be really strong. I'm curious, your second client, how did you get your second client? And I believe I already have a bit of an understanding of it, but just for anyone that doesn't know, how did you get your second client? And how has what they have needed differed from the first client, and how has that changed like how you think about expanding what you're currently doing?
Yeah, so my second client was actually a referral from the first client. So I was quite lucky that they brought me more business. But interestingly, that second client was the complete opposite of the first client in terms of behavior, understanding of the processes, very not detail oriented, no processes in place, but no AI champion as well. And that's one thing that's very important, right? My first client has a clear AI champion, right? Someone who understands this, who is driven to get AI adoption within the business. The second client still is literally the entire opposite in every single way of that first client. So while it was great to have them as a referral, it was much more challenging to actually deliver value because they didn't really know what they wanted. They just knew they wanted to get some automations because they could see that, they were talking a lot with my first client. They were quite close, so they could tell how they were benefiting from it. And they're like, oh, we need this in our business. Please put us in touch. And that was actually a very, very difficult start because for the first month and a half, or 2 months, I was just talking with the founder who was still kind of building his team, didn't really have any process person. He didn't have an ops manager, basically. So that was a lot more challenging because they new ideas, but they had no details about how they wanted to get to the end goal. They were just like, oh yeah, we need this. And I'm like, okay, but I don't know how you're currently doing it. What are you currently doing it? So it was just a lot more challenging of a client. And I still ended up working with that client until last month, and they hired internally, so they didn't need me anymore. But I still stayed with that client for maybe 7 months.
That's really interesting to me that they could transition to having an internal hire versus working with you. Because I would imagine that an internal hire would cost more than an agency or an external consultant for expertise like this. Did they give you a reason why they went for an internal versus working with you continually?
Yeah, if I tell you why, it will be very obvious who that client is. So
Okay, so fair enough.
yeah, so I can't really tell you, but it had nothing to do with me as a person. I was not. They didn't hire someone because they didn't want to work with me. It's just a circumstantial thing that made them have someone internally. Let's just say.
Okay, fair enough. That checks out because I was going to say I know a lot of the work that you've been doing has been excellent. So I'd be very curious to hear why there would be a preference of internal versus external. Because I think like that's going to be something that a lot of people who want to start automation agencies are going to be competing against. It's like if you think about it, it's so early and there's such a supply demand like discrepancy in terms of number of automation agencies versus number of companies out there that need automations, that you're probably not competing with another automation agency. You're probably competing with the person inside the company who knows a lot about AI, and you need to be better than that person. So I'm always interested in like the way that dichotomy kind of plays out.
I'll just
Something.
say one thing on this before you move on. Um, this second client, they had, when I came in, they had another person who was doing some form of automation, but just was a finance person. Now, this guy was their finance person, but he had a side business where he was also building his own AI automation agency. I ended up becoming friends with this guy, and we now have a call every Friday with two founders building the same thing. And then this internal guy that came in and made me redundant effectively, I also became friends with him, right? And now he's part of these Friday calls I have, which is why I was telling you, can we do an hour earlier than today if we're to reschedule to tomorrow? Because at this time, I have this call with these two guys every single week. And one thing I will tell you, two things is one, I think there is going to be a huge demand for SMBs to hire an AI guy. That is going to be a position that is going to become in massive demand in the next 6, and is already in demand, right? But I think it's really going to boom. However, every single person who is doing AI automations that I have personally met tends to have a very entrepreneurial spirit, because most of the people who are trying to do these AI automations, nobody's telling you to do it, right? You don't come from a school to learn AI automations. It's something you learn on your own, right? And that is generally the trait of an entrepreneur at heart. So while I think there is a huge demand for AI people to be hired in businesses, I think most of those people, if they get those skills, they will know that they can probably make more money by starting their own business. And whether they have the business acumen or not to actually build a business is another question. But I think it's actually going to be, we're going to see a huge shortage of that skill set that could be hired, because most of those people are entrepreneurial and want to start their own thing. And that's what I've noticed with those guys, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy how I'm sure you've spoken to a few people that have done this. I've now got a couple friends that have done this too, where they became the AI person in their company. They became so good at automating something, but it's like they're never going to get compensated fairly for that within the organization. They might get like a little bit of a pay bump, but it's like it's so much higher leverage to take that automation that was created or that skill set or that understanding and be like, okay, I did this at a law firm I worked at. How many other law firms probably need this? And even I was talking to someone yesterday who was saying, he's like, oh, I just like want to go off and do my own thing. And he's in architecture. And I was basically saying, right now, this is the playbook. Like if you want a playbook, you can literally like find a way to automate something in the company you work at and then go and take that elsewhere. And he said to me, oh yeah, but like there's not a lot happening in AI and architecture at the moment. And I was like, here's the secret. There's no out the box solution that's good for anything at the moment. What's happening is people are kind of just like gluing things together and finding ways to make something work. And then they're like, one day they're like, holy shit, I've just saved myself 8 hours a week by creating this system. It took me 2 weeks to make, or 3 weeks or 4 weeks to make. But now that I have it, like it literally takes me like an hour to do what used to take 8 hours. And so, yeah, that I'm so fascinated by these use cases where people have like, it's like what Naval talks about with specific knowledge. Like you learn specific knowledge through doing. There's no path. You figure it out, and then it's like that skill set. Once you have it, it's way more valuable to take elsewhere. I think that's a good segue to what you were saying before about like the whole point of this content, and both from a personal learning perspective and from a hopefully sharing and someone else finding this useful perspective, is breaking down like how you would start this, like if you were to do it again, or if you were to do it now, because obviously the platforms have changed a bit since when you started. If someone was just starting out now and they've heard all these podcasts and they're like, oh, I should do this for accountants, I should do this for lawyers, I should do this for, like, I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, surely just call every private equity firm in the world because they've got amazing bankroll, and I'm sure there's something high impact you could do. But if someone was to go down that road, how would you suggest they think about it? Particularly for the server side, because I know there's tech side we can talk about, but for the server side, how would you suggest they think about it?
Yeah, I think there are two categories of people that are important to separate in the first place. Is people who have experience in any industry because they've been working in this industry for 2, 3, 5, 10 years, and they have a lot of understanding of how this industry works, what are the pain points, what are, the pros and cons. And then you have someone who's very young, like 18 years old, super entrepreneurial, but obviously doesn't have any work experience, right? So I obviously fit in the first category. I'm no longer 18, so I will speak mostly for the first one. The unfair advantage that you have if you have worked in any kind of sector industry is that you know this industry quite well, right? So the mistake I think many people do is thinking they can reach out to any business and say, hey, we can automate XYZ for you. Whereas me, I was very clear I was going to focus on marketing agencies because that's what I know, that's what I've built, that's what I've worked in, right? Both in Web 2 and in Web 3. And so it was very clear and relatively easy for me when I got into the business of my first client, and second and third and fourth, I quickly got a grasp of what they were doing, how they were doing it, what was the most evident problem. Had I not had any marketing agency experience, it would have taken me a little bit longer. It would have not been as obvious to me what the problem/solution was, right? So I would say the easiest thing is to stick to the niche, if you have any experience, and then kind of, if you have some network, great, knock on the doors of people you already know. That is the first thing. And if you don't have network, well, you go and grind and find doors to knock on. If you don't have any experience, I think it's obviously a little bit more challenging, and I may not be the best person ever to kind of answer that. However, what I would potentially try to do is to go on stuff like Upwork and all that stuff. And Upwork is not as good as it was back in 2020 or 2021. You now need to pay to reach out to people, so there is more cost involved. However, Upwork is low barrier to entry. It's also going to be lower money that you can make, but there is hundreds of new ads every single day that come out of, the keyword automation and all that stuff. And I would look at what are the things that I see the most, and I'm going to learn how to do the three requests that I see the most. And then when I know how to do this, I'm going to record a video and show to any of those people posting automation let's just take a random example, right? Automate my CRM, right? If I see, I have no experience, I'm going to see, oh, I've seen 10 requests about automating CRM. I'm going to learn how to do this. And then when I now reach out to those people on Upwork, I'm going to record a video showing, hey, I've automated this CRM for a client. I am the actual client, nobody needs to know. And then I'm going to pitch every single person looking for CRM automation. I'm simplifying it a little bit here for the purpose of the video, but that's how I would go about it. So that's how to get the first client, right? And do you want to say something before I move on
No,
to?
I was just going to say on the Upwork example. So I was going to challenge you on that. I was going to say, I think Upwork is just way too commoditized for something like this. But you've created a really interesting idea within that, like, which is, it's like, if you want to get those early testimonials, you could like, because we've seen it time and time again. I'm sure you have found this with like the agencies you run. This was effectively the same for the agency we run as well. It's like you can grow really quickly just by doing stuff for free at the beginning, and then you very quickly kind of find out like you don't have to do 3 weeks of work for free, but like you
Of
can do a
course.
little bit of automation stuff for certain types of companies, start to figure out if you gel with any particular use case, type of company, type of individual. And I feel like on Upwork, like the thing that I really wanted to do with this content, like for myself and publicly, is like make everything like not abstract or theoretical anymore. Like there's so many theoretical things you can do in this space, and that's why I love speaking to people like you. It's like this is real. This is like money that people are actually making from this type of service business. And what's really cool about
Beginning. So I'm telling you, it's not abstract, right?
yeah,
This is exactly how I also did. I did some Upwork for about a month and a half to 2 months. And the goal was exactly what you're saying. It was just to gain experience. I didn't care too much about how much it was going to be priced in. Most of those jobs were 300, 500, 800 to 1,000 maximum. But it was a great way to get testimonial, to get experience, to get some case studies that I could build as well, and that helped me, gain all this stuff. And I promise you, Upwork is harder today than it was 8 months ago or 9 months ago. So, it's going to cost you more money to get started on Upwork. They have like this credit that you can use to get boosted and rank higher in the inbox of the person posting the job. So it's getting more competitive, but I think it's still a great place to start. And if you don't have a lot of experience, it's not about the money just yet, right? It's just about gaining some experience, earning your stripes. So yeah, I just wanted to reinforce that it's not an abstract example. It's an example that I've gone through myself.
no, 100%. Like I'm looking at it, and there's some serious like there are going to be categories of work on here that you wouldn't even thought that there's demand for. It's like a free so it's like Google for finding where there's demand right now in terms of what people want to automate. I'm super curious, like just before we move on from this point, I know you had something to add, but um I'm really, really curious. Are you finding with the current clients that the types of automations that they're going for, like, is it stuff that's closer to the money, like in terms of the sale, or is it stuff that's much more back end? Because a lot of the content that I've been consuming and kind of seeing across the timeline on YouTube from entrepreneurs, it seems to be that the automations are slowly like gravitating closer and closer to the money, like things like sales follow up agents, because saw this awesome example from something that I'm probably going to post in my first video, which is it was an example of like a wedding planner. Their team is at venues all day, like showing people through venues. So when sales leads come through, they don't follow up until the end of the day, and often they lose the lead. And so there's a lot of demand for these like time to lead, time to sale kind of automations. Whereas of course, like the headaches that come for that founder that you were talking about, who spent an hour and a half every single day doing the same work, that actually is almost close to the money because the founder is no longer selling. They're spending all their time doing admin. But like, I'm just super curious, where are you seeing the demand in terms of the type of automation at the moment? Like what seems to have the greatest appetite from like a founder or agency's perspective?
So I would say it has been a little bit across both, well, a lot across both ops in general, so internal ops and then sales as a whole, which is a big bucket. It has a lot of different verticals in that. But I would say a lot of things have been in regards to internal operations for my clients. I would say probably 60 to 70% has been internal ops related, and then maybe 20% has been sales related, and then another 60%, 20%, and then the last 20% has been finance related. So like when I sales is like, CRM management, pipeline management, all that stuff. And then finance is like, I work with these influencer marketing agencies, is like, how do we make sure our influencers are paid on time, paid the right amount because deliverables have been canceled, etc. Or how do we make sure when Alex has delivered all his content for this campaign that he now goes into the bucket of 100% delivery complete. We need to move to creating the invoice. So like a lot of financial related stuff. And I think, I'm not sure if that's a reflection of the larger appetite for AI automation that is probably closer to what my clients have done in general, which is a lot of marketing agencies, and most of them have a pretty good deal flow, so they may not be, representative of what most marketing agencies are going through, right? But I would say in my case, 60% ops, 20% CRM, sales, and 20% finance. I would say that's maybe the representation.
Okay, cool. And based on those experiences of what you've built in those different categories, are you trying to expand the service side now, or because you've built a tech platform, are you almost like starting to push your attention that way? Because would understand if you went either direction or had a split direction. Where are you going in terms of like how you're trying to expand? Are you trying to compound on kind of what's happening in the service side, or are you using that compounding in how you're doing the platform stuff?
Yeah, good question. So just for those who don't know, I've launched a SaaS product, which is an influencer management platform. And the reason why I launched this is because I was working with 3 or 4 different influencer marketing agencies, and I thought the way they were running their stuff kind of sucked. It's all through Notion, Google Sheet, and all that stuff. It wasn't great, right? That's just my opinion. So I thought, what would the best influencer marketing management platform look like? I looked at what exists out there, and I couldn't really find anything viable. So that's why I built it. And I've actually had this thought process pretty much from the second automation I built for my first client. And the thought was, this that I'm building could be its own micro product, right? So I built something that, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. I built a Slack bot where if you dump a PDF, it's an invoice reader channel. If you dump a PDF in there, it will read it, pull all the details from that PDF, and then you have a bunch of buttons that come after as a response, and you can confirm that all the fields are correct, and it will send it into your finance database. And I was like, that could literally be its own little mini SaaS tool that, hey, connect this bot to your finance database, to your Slack, and just map out the fields, and that's it, for example. I built another thing that was very templated, a couple of things like that. And then when I started looking into this KOL platform, I thought to myself, what would be a great way for me to build, I guess, my current life and business is if I can find all these micro SaaS ideas that I can turn into a live product. If I can have, in an ideal world, right, 3, 5, 10 softwares like that all make anywhere between 1 to 10K per month, but require very little maintenance. And that's maybe another topic we can talk about later, but building in public on Twitter is the best way to get your first 100 free users, right? And I know I don't know if you've seen it. Yesterday I put a video about building this platform in public, and every week I'm going to make an update, the good, the bad, the ugly, etc. And that's how people like Level.io or Mark Lu and all these kind of like indie hacker, solo dev are building their audience and their customer base, right? It's not through ads and all that stuff. And that's kind of like the route I'm thinking I am going into, because all of these ideas that I'm basically getting from all my clients, some of those are really good. And I'm like, man, I can turn this into its own software. And I'm going to build it. So that's kind of like how I build this platform. I've kind of forgotten what the initial question was.
We'll come back to the initial question, but I'm really curious about this because, so I'll use an example in my own personal experience. I use a lot of focus blocker apps. Like I used an app called Freedom. I use Opal.
Yeah,
I use all these apps.
I noted it because of you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I've really gone out and shared them with as many people as possible because they've benefited me so much. But I actually have like a lot of issues with those apps. Like I'm someone that like is probably pretty hardcore ADHD. Find it really hard to concentrate sometimes, and I really need to use these apps in order to like really get work done. But I found that the apps were missing a lot that really could have made my experience better and actually make me focus even more consistently. And so I built my own app just to make like as something that would be useful for myself. And I love it. Like it's great. And I see so many opportunities for things that I just want to build on it to make it more useful for me. But when you talk about this example of like the throwing the invoice in the Slack, it gets recorded, it can get sent into your financial database. My brain immediately, like the entrepreneurial brain in me goes, that's fucking awesome. Like that's so good. This is going to be useful to so many people. And then the second part of my brain goes, that's like run an agency, which is like, I know for a fact this is amazing for a certain group of people. Now I just need to find them. Which is always the harder part. Like, how do you think about like, because I almost have this like dilemma constantly where I get so excited about something that I can build and I'm like, I know this is awesome. I know this is valuable, but I have no idea how to get it to the type of person that needs this. Because like in your example, it's not like, oh, lawyers or accountants in general. It's like, it's people who might be heavy Slack users that would really love that as an integration with a team size of a certain scale or something like that. How do you think about like an app you build like that and actually getting it in the hands of the right people?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right?
Literally, right?
Yeah, and I have spent a lot of time watching a few people that I'm going to mention. Actually, I've got them in a Twitter list of people I want to interview, so I'm just going to pull this list. So there is the famous one that you will all know called Level.io. I'm sure you've heard of this guy.
Yeah. Peter Levels, absolute legend.
Peter Levels, yeah. There is Mark Lu, who is a French guy. There is Theo, who has T3.gg. There is Thibaut, who is the guy that launched Tweet Hunter or something like that.
He's always all over my feed.
Aplio, etc. So like basically, I think you have two ways to really look at how you can acquire a customer. Is either you go outbound and you're going to reach out to those customers. However you make that happen, whether it's cold outreach through DMs, through email marketing, Facebook ads, it doesn't matter, right? Let's just call this outreach as a general bucket. And then there is pulling people towards you, right? And we are in a fortunate position, you and I, that we have what I would call a small brand, a small personal brand. Yours is slightly less small than mine, but I still consider it a small personal brand. And realistically, that's already enough to get your first few users, right? And I think the important, like right now, building the startup, building the SaaS product is just the easy part, right? The harder part is becoming distribution has more important than it has ever been, right? So you can have a great product, but it doesn't really matter if you don't have a way to get eyes on it, right? Which is why I've actually been more active on Twitter over the last month and a half, is kind of like to prepare for the launch of KOL Sync, because I know like the best way, I have a list of agencies I'm going to send DMs to and so on. But the best way to get users today is to have a personal brand that is not niche in one specific topic, but just big enough that you get enough eyes on it so that you can show what you're building in public to the rest of the world. And like that's the route I'm going towards right now. And that's why I'm really, happy to do this podcast, to be tweeting a lot more, to start my YouTube channel, because it's just a free acquisition funnel. It's not as fast as maybe running ads and all that stuff, but I think, developing something at first where you have a small core audience that's going to try your product, give you the feedback, etc. You may not grow as fast in the first few months of launching this product, unless you're like huge in terms of audience size. But I think for someone like me, I don't mind kind of like growing slowly. And as I improve the product, I know my personal brand is going to grow. And you know how it goes, right? If I hit $1,000 MRR and I talk about that, that is going to get really good traction on socials because everybody wants to build their own thing, etc. When I reach 10K, that's going to be a huge milestone. When I reach 100 users, like all these kind of things that you talk about is eventually going to hit your ICP, like your ideal customer profile. And that's the route I'm taking, which is very organic. I'm not looking to do ads and a lot of outreach, which works perfectly fine as well, by the way. I just think currently in 2026, I would rather focus on building my distribution channel than building a paid advertising, and software is not the hard part right now.
100%. It's funny, like my experience of this is I think like if you were going to try and launch a product or launch a service through X, you really want to be doing a product or service that you can charge at least $1,000 a month for, and is probably B2B, right? Because it's like you could have 4K followers, but you only need like 20 clients to be making like really, really good money, especially at the beginning. And that's, I think, like the way I look at things through like the lens of my like audience on X is that I would probably only do B2B products through my audience, like through my account. I'm not sure the way that you think about it. On the B2C side, funnily enough, the thing that I think about all the time, I'm not sure if you've explored any brands that have launched this way, but is actually the thing I look at the most is actually Reddit, because like I've got a friend who just loves to build stuff, and he is just constantly making new apps. He's not even trying, like, doesn't really try to monetize anything. He just loves to build stuff. And it's crazy how high his hit rate is with having like these moments of virality on Reddit. He literally posts it in like such an organic way. It's just like, hey guys, like I've been working on this. I want to put it out there. Here's what it does. Hope you enjoy. But just does that in the right community in a really sincere way. And because he's not trying to monetize it, fits really well with the Reddit side. And that's another avenue that I think is really cool and worth exploring as well. Because like the Focus app thing, for example, it's like if I launch that on X, I think like it could get a couple hundred downloads. It's not going to go absolutely insane. But I've seen like on Reddit, like people are so sick of some of these apps or feel like they're overpaying for it for the feature set. And I'm like, oh, it'd be really interesting to explore just launching like the free version through that, which is what I'm thinking about a lot. Something that I will, to circle back to what we were talking about before, the thing I'm really interested in is you have gotten all these learnings from the clients that you've had up to this point, and you've also built your SaaS. How do you think about Focus in terms of the fork in the road that you are in now? Like, are you going all in on your SaaS and going to just keep the clients you have? Are you trying to expand your service clients? Like, how are you thinking about things from that perspective at the moment? Because I like the ADHD person in me, like sometimes just overwhelms myself with how much I could just spread myself thin.
Yeah.
But there's this kind of
Yeah.
duality and this complementary nature to the things that you build, but also the service you do. So, like, how are you thinking about that? And are you trying to expand your service business at the moment?
Yeah. So the world of AI automations is changing, and I am also pivoting a little bit within my own business right now. So, the NA10 stuff, like a lot of people now think they can do everything in Cloud Cowork and all that. And some of it is true. You can do some of what I used to do in NA10 in Cloud Cowork now. I think, both tools have their place, but I think it's becoming easier and easier to learn how you can automate some of your work, even through Cloud Code. It will direct you to get it done. It will tell you what platform to use and so on, right? So realistically, AI automations are becoming easier and easier every single LLM update that comes around. And yesterday Claude launched Tag, which is an entire chatbot that I was building 3 months ago that would get all the context for all the different parts of the business, etc. And Claude launched Claude Tag, which is effectively the same thing, right? So it's becoming. Funny enough, when I was building this chatbot for my clients, every other day I would see a new feature. When Claude was shipping a feature a day, I was like, man, they are just gonna have one patch that will erase my business. So I stopped building tech and started embracing the existing tech instead from the big boys, the OpenAI, the Claude, and all that stuff, right? And that's actually led me to the pivot that I'm making today, which is I'm still doing AI automations, and I also started a new service which is teaching businesses how to use Claude, how to use Cowork, or how to use OpenAI Workspace. And the reason for that is you can come in and do some automations, but there is always someone that thinks they can do it and they can try. If people are open to hiring someone to do AI automations, they're already quite AI friendly right now, probably, and they are tinkering with Claude, with OpenAI and whatnot, right? However, there is always a high level of what's the word? Like people within teams are not using AI at the same level, quality, and rate, right? And many teams, they know. I will just give you an example. I had a lead. I spoke with them. I did 2 calls, I followed it. We ended up declining working with them. But looking back at it now, I realized that what they wanted is the service I'm trying to sell today. And they wanted some automations. They were just not the right client because they were in the process of completely changing software, a big company, right? So it's a big thing for them to change software. And we were like, oh, it's not really right for us. You need to change to make this migration first, and then we can help. But then some of them, they were using ChatGPT. The founder was using Claude. One other person was 55. She had no Scooby-Doo about what Claude or ChatGPT was, right? And I think right now the biggest opportunity is to come in and deliver workshops on how to use Claude Cowork specifically. I think Claude Cowork is like the most powerful tool that 90% of teams should use, and they have no idea of how it works, right? And I'm not even talking about Claude Code or OpenAI ChatGPT Workspace, which is great, but I think Claude Cowork is the single most powerful thing that every single team should know how to use in really a deep way. So that's the new service we're trying to sell right now, that we are selling. And then this is more like, because, if you think about it, right? If I reach out to you as a founder and I said, hey, we are on a random example, because we know you're a business in marketing agency, we can help you do reports, whatever. Cool. Maybe I'm going to hit and you're going to be like, oh yeah, that's a bit of me. But if I tell you something like, hey, we know, most teams are trying to use AI, but they are not doing it the right way. And I'm sure some of your teammates are using AI really well, and some have no clue how to use it and just treat ChatGPT as a Google replacement. We will help you standardize, and that's the word I was looking for, and we will help you standardize how people use AI through Claude Cowork, and we will help them learn how to be more efficient and all that stuff. That's actually a way easier pitch because most founders or execs will know that they need to use AI. They may be using it or they know they need to, and they have people in the team that are either using it or need to be using it, right? So that's my foot through the door, is kind of teaching people how to use Cowork, chat and code and whatnot. And then the automations is now becoming more of an upsell rather than the main meat and potato. So that's kind of the pivot I'm doing in my business. So now, just to answer your question and kind of recap.
Can I ask you on that as well? I just want to ask the pricing model. Like, what do you think the pricing model is for their education stuff?
Yeah, so that depends on how big the team is, how many people will attend, how many workshops we need to do. But it's anywhere between 5 to 30K. So it's quite a big range, right? If we need to do it on premise, right? If we need to do it on premise, if we need to do it in online, if we're doing it to 2 people, if we're doing it to 20 people, there is quite a big variance, but it's not worth doing it for under 5 to 7K, I will say. But it can go, like our own pricing is like currently up to like 25K basically if we need to go in premise, but I'm only doing it in the Gulf region. I don't want to fly to the US and stuff like that. So I also put a geographic constraint on myself. But there is plenty of business in Dubai that will need this service.
Do you know one thing I've always loved about you and the way you do business is I think like most people and probably the people listening to this, when they heard the 5 to, what was it, 35K? Like around
30K.
that? 30K, yeah. Most people hearing that are going to go, wait, what? Like, I didn't know that was an option. Me listening to this, sometimes like having like a bit of a limited mindset around stuff like this might be like, oh, maybe it's like, I don't know, like 2K for like a online session, like one time or whatever it is. And it's funny how when you hear like a price like that, it actually creates a perception of quality as well. And like you did this in the reply guide business as well. You were definitely the more premium of the agencies that were out there, but it also meant you got the better quality clients because they're like, it's like counterintuitive, but it's like we see it with like luxury brands as well. It's like, well, for the buyers who are in the market for the best, that price in and of itself actually has utility in signaling that you are the high quality source to go to. So that is really, really cool. And the idea that that is a lead magnet, it also sets a really interesting anchor for what you can charge for the automation as well, right? Like if the education is 5 to 30K, 5 to 35K or whatever it might be, well, the automation is not going to cost 1K, right?
Of course. But if you think about it, right? If we have to go on premise, let's just say it's in Dubai, so it's next to me, right? A full workshop is usually going to be half a day, right? And if there are 15 people, well, is $1,000 training per person outlandish? It's really not, right? If you think about it at a company level, if the company can afford to get 15 people in the room for a full day or half a day, whatever, they're probably thinking, well, we're investing $1,000 or $2,000 per employee, right? All of a sudden, well, if you have 15 people and you're charging 25K or 23K or whatever, that's $1,500 per person. And then, all right, you have a 4-hour session, right? So the advantage of doing it in person is that we have individual time available with each person. So, I'm going to give you an exercise to do, right? And you have 45 minutes to do this exercise. And me, in the meantime, I'm going just like a teacher, right? I'm going seat by seat, kind of like checking anyone has a problem. And I'm able to give 5-10 minutes of one-on-one time to those people, right? Well, that's it's not $50 an hour, right? You're managing 15 exec senior people and all that stuff. So if you really think about it, would a company pay $1,000 per employee and they bring in 20 employee, or $2,000 per employee? It's not really that expensive, right? So if you break it down by like, what is the value per employee? It's actually not that much.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It reminds me of, I saw this really cool interview with Mike Cannon-Brookes, who runs Atlassian. He was talking about like how pricing is going to evolve in like the AI era, because like we used to charge for, like software companies used to charge for seats, but now companies will have fewer and fewer people managing the same thing. So like the software company is now like, damn, like this weird way of pricing that's kind of never made sense necessarily. It's software, like who cares how many seats it is, but like the like is now going to go out the window because teams will have fewer people on maybe that specific piece, or company sizes will shrink a little bit, so it's harder. You win one deal and there's fewer people. But he talked about the seats pricing as something that's really, really important, because something that humans really care about is a feeling of fairness. There's something about like when you have 20 people in a company and the software company is like to you, well, we have to charge you per person. There's something about that that makes you go, oh, well, that feels fair. Like, yeah,
Of
fair
course,
enough.
I'm not charging the same for 10 people than I would be for 20 people, right? And if it's more than 20 people, then it needs to be a 2-day workshop, because I don't really want to do more than 10, 15 people. Otherwise, I don't have enough time to give to each person. And if you think once again, right? Okay, we're charging 2K per employee, let's just say, right? Well, do you think how quickly will they get their ROI back, right? If this employee learns how to automate all their reports, right? And all the employees, there is now a shared skill in the cloud teams, and every employee is now automating their reports. Let's just keep that as a super simple example, right? And that takes every employee, it saves every employee 1 hour per week, right? Let's just say 1 hour per week. Well,
That's modest. Yeah.
20 employees, we're saving 20 hours, right? The ROI, and then they're going to learn how to do other things, right? They're going to automate some of their sales process, and so on and so on and so on. So the ROI to get 2K back in time saved, or in increased value of the employee to the business, is actually not very long. So, like, I also, when I first discussed this with my wife, I was on a much lower price, and we had this discussion back and forth, and we kind of came to the conclusion that I'm telling you now, that, or if you think about it, it's actually not that expensive, right? Because the companies we're targeting, they're doing $5 million plus revenue, right? So what is 20 grand for something that is potentially going to increase productivity by 10% across the employee base?
Yeah, if you told me you were going to take 20 people and make them more effective, like I'd be pretty pumped about that, right? And the type of company that has 20 people can afford that. So it makes complete sense. It's so funny. Like, I feel like it's the type of thing you could name the entire company something like "Don't Get Left Behind" or something like that, that plays into the anxiety that every executive is feeling at the moment.
Just to finish, before you move to the next question, because that was like the first part of my answer to your original question, which was, what direction are you moving in, right? So I'm trying to move towards that direction of teaching, because it's one much higher value ticket, and you're selling knowledge instead of selling deliverables, right? And most successful people in 90% of businesses will end up teaching other people how to do it, because it's just way more scalable and it just makes way more money. It's a way higher profit margin. Although, I'm two people business with my wife, so we're already at 95% profit margin, but we can charge 20K for a 2 days workshop, whereas to charge 20K for AI automations is like a pretty big piece of work, right?
For sure.
The scalability here is much higher in terms of ticket item. And then the SaaS route that I'm taking right now, so this KOL sync that I launched, I do not expect it to change my life, right? To be very candid, I am hoping that it's going to take off, but I am more doing it for the learning experience, right? If I get 0 users and it's a total flop, I am absolutely fine with that, right? I am not putting all my eggs into this one app that I've made, thinking is going to be the one, and I'm going to do 50K MRR, 99% profit margin by next quarter. If it happens, it's great, right? I genuinely believe it's a great platform, which is why I'm confident putting my name on it and putting it out there. But the goal is really just to learn, earn my stripes, and kind of get it out, see what works, what doesn't work, learn how to communicate with my potential customers better, learn how, all that stuff. Just start building my brand as a solo developer, building stuff, etc. I already have my next idea that I'm working on, right? I have
Also,
another.
just before you go to your next idea, I want to give you more flowers and more credit for KOL Sync, by the way, because you're like, if this doesn't work out, like it's all fine and blah, blah, blah. I like a lot of people who might say something like that, they might have vibe coded something in a weekend that had never spoken to a single customer. Like, just to give you your flowers and for the audience's perspective, like I've seen you build this over many, many, many months with a ton of user feedback, a ton of different scenarios you've had to account for. You and I have spent like an hour going through it ourselves, and like I've obviously I'm another avatar that's completely aligned to it. And for anyone listening, it's like, why isn't Alex a user? It's because we also built something ourselves internally. But the like I think the way that you've gone about building it is so cool, because it's like if you keep compounding the building in that direction, it would surprise me if you didn't have something go extremely massive. So like I want for anyone listening, it's like this isn't something you vibe coded in a weekend. This has been months of work and customer feedback that's gone into it. But idea number 2, you were going to say what you're building next.
I'm already building something else. I don't want to talk about it just yet. Actually, I'll tell you something about it. The idea that I'm building next exists already in the world, out there in the wild, right? And I think I can build something that's 10% better than what's already out there. And with this KOL Sync platform, I built something that already exists. There are a couple of platforms that do this. I'm going to be honest, they are big businesses, some of them, and I have subscribed, I've paid for a month for these platforms, and they were all dog shit. So I genuinely believe I've built something better than what's publicly available. And I'm doing exactly the same thing with this app, right? This one is for content creators. It's an app for content creators, whether it's X, Instagram, doesn't matter. YouTube, more not necessarily YouTube, but it's an app for content creators, and it's something I use myself every day, right? And that's why I know there is product market fit is because I'm using it for myself, and now I'm turning it from a bunch of things I've glued together to make it work to a polished package with a subscription that you can use and that anyone can use directly. And I've been using this for the past month, kind of putting it together, etc. And I genuinely think it's for anyone that is not into building stuff by themselves and has used OpenClaw, has used Hermes. For the people that do not use OpenClaw and Hermes, basically, but want to put out a lot of content and all that stuff. And so if you know the Swammer brothers, do you know who these guys are? So
No,
they
I missed them.
German brothers, and they launched a copycat of eBay in Germany like 15 years ago, whatever, 20 years
I think
ago.
I've heard this story. Yeah.
So they just copy businesses that exist and that are booming, and most of those businesses got acquired by the business they end up copying, right? But their idea was just, hey, we're going to copy what works and we're going to try to make it 1% better. These guys were not even focused on making it 1% better. But the idea is a lot of people, I think, are scared of launching an app that already exists out there. A month ago, I was looking into getting a really good screen recording app, on my Mac. I found 20 plus amazing screenshot and screen recording apps. And I found that at least 10 of them are doing more than 10K per month in revenue old single developer, right?
Like new, like vibe coded, like
Yeah,
single
yeah, yeah, yeah.
developer kind of. Wow.
I found them on Twitter, so it's not even like I went on, I just looked like screen recording and I found a bunch of dudes building screen recording apps, and some of them are really, really good. And I follow a couple of these guys now. Like one guy just passed 6K revenue in the last 30 days. I've got these other guys doing 50K profit, 50K MRR, and it's one dude, right? And I found like at least 10 of those that are all doing money, right? Do you know how many PDF apps generate more than 100K a month?
I don't know how many generate that much, but I know that that's like one of the classic apps for
Yeah.
like an indie developer. Yeah.
There are 22 PDF apps on the App Store that generate more than 100K a month.
Like just to turn a doc into a PDF of like a photo or
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
it. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah. So, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. And that's basically what I'm doing, right? I think I have an idea and I can make it 10% better than what's already out there. And that's what I'm doing with KOL Sync. And that's what I'm going to keep doing.
Yeah, I love that. I've got like a post-it note in front of me that's asked the question, what is possible today that wasn't possible yesterday? Because I think a lot about like Cal AI, I think followed like a very similar trajectory to what you're describing, which is like they went, oh, it's really annoying to log stuff in MyFitnessPal. What if I could just take a photo and like have all this stuff logged automatically? And it's like that is like I'd say that's like a quantum leap, but it's like from an implementation perspective with the new tools that were available, that was probably like 10% more of a build out. And look at where that got them acquired, like the eBay story, acquired by the thing that
Yeah.
they went to compete with.
Yeah, I think they
Um,
got acquired for 200 million or something like that, right? Some
yeah,
crazy.
100 million plus is like the definite guaranteed, and it's probably what's that, nine figures. Um, yeah, insane. I am conscious of time because I feel
I
like
have.
I feel like I want to make sure that for the listener we keep it tight because I feel like you and I have ended up on calls that have gone for
Yeah,
many hours, and we could do this all day.
yeah.
Um, I've got kind of two more questions. I'll start with the first one. I think this is really fascinating. Like the loop I've kind of defined for myself that I would really want to go down as like a pathway is like speak to interesting people, build interesting things. Speak to interesting people, build interesting things. It's like learn, build, learn, build. But I don't know if that means like building like a basket of things or if that means building something really awesome individually and like keep rebuilding it. Like there's a great Rick Rubin quote that I'll butcher, which is like, if you want to make something good, make a lot of things. If you want to make something great, make something a bunch of times, like remake it and remake it. How are you thinking about like, are you building like a stable of apps? That's what it sounds kind of like you're going the direction of. You're like identifying problems in your own life. You're like, oh, this could be better. This doesn't exist here and it kind of should. Is that the way you're thinking about it? You just want to continually build out and then iterate, maybe go back and iterate on the ones you've already created. Is that kind of the
Yeah,
pathway forward and
at
serve
least
it
in the
to,
first place. Yeah,
yeah.
at least in the first place. And for multiple reasons. The first one is I believe that it's way easier to go from 0 to 100K than it is to go from 100K to 500K or to 1 million, right? Both in terms of users, revenue, whatever, right? Like my ideal goal would be, hey, I have 5 apps that make 10K a month each on average, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I am happy as Larry. Because I think the way to 10K is relatively easy. The way to 100K a month on a single app is a lot harder. As a solo person, I want to stay a solo person, right? So I would rather rinse and repeat the format that works up to like, let's say 10, 20K per month. If one of those apps goes ballistic and, booms, then I will happily kind of like focus on that. But I think it's easy to get to 10K a month by building an app, right? For
Yeah.
example, I have this KOL Sync. It's $300 or $400 per month, for example. Can I get 50 customers, 50 paying users, paying agencies across the entire world, I think that's possible, right? That's already doing 6 to 8 grand basically, right? So I think that's kind of like a possible world. Can I get 5,000 paying agencies? That's a lot harder, right? Because then, acquisition becomes the problem and all that stuff. So that's one thing. The other thing is, I'm still new. I was not developing. I've never been a dev, a technical person. I have a lot of ideas, and I think I have a good clarity of what my ideas are, which in itself is, I think, a skill. But I'm not necessarily a technical person, right? So I'm not sure how to build apps, exactly, and all that stuff. So I'm learning. And the goal is really to just get my learnings, earn my badges, like I said earlier. And if I just focus on one app and I think this app is everything, and I'm going to focus on KOL Sync, well, who knows? Maybe it's a terrible idea. Maybe the niche is too small. Maybe all these agencies already have built custom solutions, and the process, the friction of moving from one agency to another, to one product to another, is just going to be so hard to overcome that. I'm going to end up with 3 paying users, right? So I don't know. So I just want to experiment and see what works, what is fun to build, and so on. So I think that's the second reason as to why I'm going with a stable of app. And if I also build multiple apps, it is multiple audiences that I'm going to be able to build my brand on, right? If I just build KOL Sync, I'm just going to be that KOL management guy. But
Yeah.
now I'm going to build, and that is a B2B product, right? The next product I'm building is a B2C app, right? And that's for content creators. So the audience I'm going to be able to touch by building this other app is much, much, much wider, right? So I'm also thinking about building in public as a way to grow my personal brand. And if I just stick to one vertical, I'm just limiting myself. And the fourth reason is I just have a heck of a lot of fun building new ideas, and that's something I'm not going to stop.
100%. It's funny. I think, like, in what you described, I think there's this like subconscious thing that I sometimes confront, and it's like the idea of doing service as like a way to taste what could be turned into an app. It's like that's such a nice loop, but there's something that's just so attractive about breaking through and actually like building an application that has like infinite leverage built into it, is just like so much so the ultimate goal. Like that is just like such a fun thing to go after. And then the process of building is just so much fun. That's like literally I was defining for myself like what I just really enjoy to do. And it's funny, like the focus blocker app that I've built for myself, it's like I don't even think about monetization. I don't really care about that at all. There's something that's almost like, it's almost like if you grew up and weren't artistic but you were creative, this is like such a fun creative outlet to like pour a lot of energy into when you have that extra time. And it's just cool that we happen to be playing in a game where it's like if you do a good job of that, that can turn into a business, and then you're on the cycle of like building something you love, generating revenue from it. And I think that's like a really awesome life worth fighting for. um we'll have to wrap up in a moment because I'm going to have to jump onto a call as well. But the thing I wanted to ask you about is like, I feel like every time I speak to someone who's doing something entrepreneurial in this space, I always get so, and is like building, whether it be building something or doing services, I get so inspired because you always pick up one or two things from them, and it's like it adds to your tool belt. And it's like the more of these that you learn about, the more you just pick up these nuances that can have such an impact. um and like I'll give you one super quick example. I was researching those guys from Push Scroll. I think you read the article that I wrote about that. It's an app where you have to do push-ups in order to be able to scroll on TikTok, for anyone that hasn't heard of it. And one really cool takeaway, the hero of the story is that they made a TikTok without even building the app, and the TikTok blew up, and then they're like, oh, we should build the app. But the really important nuance that I actually took away was that for their app, they built a Discord early on, where they said, hey, if you're a user of this app and you want to give us feedback, join in here and we will build the things that you tell us. And that actually created like a really rapid loop of customer feedback. And compared to what they launched with versus what it was 2 weeks later, it was like night and day different. And it was so much better, which allowed them to onboard 300,000 users. And so I take that Discord piece and I like put that in my pocket. I'm like, okay, that's, if I ever launch a B2C app, I'm going to launch a Discord as a way to get feedback. Like that's definitely something I'd do. Have there been any entrepreneurs that you've seen, maybe some lesser known ones who are just doing small businesses or built a small app or something like that, that you think are really worth paying attention to and potentially for me to go and research and check out? Is there anyone that inspires you or any apps that you've seen or service businesses that have been really cool?
Yeah, I would say I will mention two guys that I'm following quite closely these days. One is Mark Lou. I don't know if you know this guy. Mark with a C and Lou, Lou, is a French indie hacker, solo dev, whatever. He has a really good YouTube channel, so he's actually great at making content as well. And he's built 30 different apps, 20 of them, 25 of them has failed, right? So he has a lot of experience in that world, and he's been doing this for quite a few years. He's a real dev by trade, so he's been doing this for a long time, but he's now vibe coding everything as well. And he has a lot of interesting takes. I was actually watching some of his videos earlier this afternoon around pricing your app and how he hates free trials, free versions. You should never have people using your app for free, basically, right? Because they're just freeloaders and they just are the worst kind of customers to ask you feedback because they're not paying, but they want you to improve the platform and all that stuff. So I think that's like one thing that I was like, oh, I'm going to make a free version of KWell Sync, and I actually did, and I'm thinking I should just remove that, right? But because it's such an expensive ticket, like $300 a month, I was like, oh, maybe I need them to be able to try it, right? And I was like, oh, actually, maybe what I need to do is to have a video explaining and showing the platform on the landing page, right? I should remove the free tier, basically. So I think, and I'm not saying this is the right way or the wrong way, but actually also one thing he saw that I thought was very interesting, people hate subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
If you have no dev cost, aka your free time replica that you've made for yourself, I was just thinking when you were saying all that stuff, I was like, man, you should just put it out there and sell it for like $20 a lifetime rather than a subscription base, right? And I guarantee you will have people downloading it, and you make it a downloadable app, so you never have to worry about it. If you make updates, they get the updates for free because they've paid $20 and they get a lifetime access to it, right? And that's also an interesting way to think about it. And not for me, I have API cost, right, for KOL Sync, so I can't really make it a one-time purchase. But there is a lot of value in either looking at a one-time purchase or a credit-based purchase. So you only use for what you only pay what you're using it for. So it's like all these pricing model differences, I think, are like super interesting. So I've been thinking about that a lot. And another guy who also is really close to Mark Lou is called Jack Fricks. And he actually launched a platform with Mark Lou like 2 months ago. And he's the dude, he's a solo guy as well, 100% vibe coder, non-technical background. And he built this platform called PostBridge. And it's just a content scheduling platform to push content on every single social media platform you can think of at once, right? And he passed $50,000 MRR last month as a solo dude. And he's doing like 96% profit margin. And he's been building this for like 2.5 years, or 3 years. So it's not like he's had immediate success. It's been a slow grind, but really interesting dude as well. So yeah, like these are the kind of people I'm kind of like following up, and the lessons I'm trying to get out of them as well are those ones.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love the suggestion about the lifetime free, by the way. I feel like that, not lifetime free, one-time purchase. it follows the philosophy of there's an entrepreneur that's awesome. I think his name's Jason Fried, and he like all his SaaS like follows that manifesto as well, or a number of them do. And there's something about the goodwill, like people are actually like happy to pay for something as a one-time thing. You know what I mean? Like that's been missing from yeah, yeah. Like you want to just feel like that you buy it and that's it. And so it's like as long as it doesn't have AI features. Another cool thing I've seen, and we'll probably talk about it like in a future catch up, is API wrappers as well, like apps where
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this needs AI in order to drive it, but it's like I'm just going to sell you the software component to it, and then you just add your API key and it works. Like like so when you do that, you can have a one-time purchase as well, which is like a really interesting middle ground. Obviously, it requires a more technical audience, but I think that's cool too. But Kelano, very, very awesome having you on. I love this chat. I didn't know about the education side as well. So I'm so glad we got to tease that out. That was like an extra, as soon as we got there, I was like, oh, we're going to be going for another half an hour at least. And we did that. And so I think we covered some really interesting topics. Thank you for being the first guest on this. Very, very
That means a lot.
excited. There's no one else I'd rather have on. So yeah, until next time, man, thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me, and I hope your audience enjoyed the chat.
Sweet. Peace, guys.